question of selling cars in Japan. The Germans now are almost selling as many cars percent share of the market in Japan as they have in this country. BMW and Mercedes, in fact, are ahead. Why is it you think that you guys have such a...
Well, here's a misconception. First of all, let's get the facts straight. There are two boutique cars over there that are bought for snob appeal, and they're called two German cars, Mercedes and BMW. But in total, you leave those two out. You say, why have you done such a great job? They're high-priced boutique cars for rich people, and there happen to be a lot of rich Japanese. But that's 1.5% of the market we got over there. We are trying, Honda's agreed to try to sell 5,000 for us. I said it must be a typo. I thought you guys were going to sell 50,000 Cherokees. They know what a Cherokee is. They saw a lot of Jeeps in World War II and the like, so they know what the hell they are. They're familiar with it, and they know they're good units. But the truth of the matter is, this car is 25 grand here loaded. When it goes to Japan and gets its boat right, it goes to $50,000. So we got some problems there. But you know what the biggest single problem is? The point I made. No dealer wants to sell them. There's a compact, here at Antitrust, we couldn't do this. Nobody will sell American cars. They say, build your own dealer network. How? I mean, $20 a square foot land or 40 is one thing, but $6,000 a square foot. A small dealership in Tokyo we had planned is $23 million for the land. How do I get the volume? How do I do this? So what we really need is reciprocity in the distribution system. The Bush administration calls that SII, Structural Impediments Initiative. It sounds fancy and it gets confusing. What it means is open up your goddamn market the way we've opened up ours. There's no fairness discussed in the press, with anybody, and certainly in our government. So right-hand drive, they don't want right-hand drive right now. The volumes are so small, the Japanese guy wants a snobbery of left-hand drive. When we get some volume, we'll do right-hand drive. So we have got to open up their distribution system, and saying we don't have any products that they want, Germany's a tough market. Europe's a tough market. They've taken 50,000 from zero minivans and Jeeps. Why is it? Are they all nuts over there? When the currency changed, we sold 4,000 in Korea from zero. We sold 5,000 in Taiwan from zero. We sold 50,000 in Europe from zero. And guess what? Zero in Japan. You go find out.
It was number 3, Chrysler, that took the biggest wallop.
I would like to introduce the chairman of the board, Lee Iacocca.
When Lee Iacocca came to Chrysler in 1978, he found that the Chrysler organization was in big trouble, and not only because of the position in the marketplace, but because of past sins. Chrysler had cut the R&D development areas and also cut engineering to maintain a profitability. The next problem he found was that they would build more cars than they had orders for. In fact, it was not uncommon for them to have something like 100, 150,000 cars sitting somewhere in Detroit waiting to be shipped. There seemed to be the mindset that Chrysler was going to go broke, that they weren't going to make it. So when he walked in 78, he said it was a big mess, and he was right, it was a big mess.
My excuse for coming to you is real simple. I'm running out of money, and I'm going to have to shut down.
In his effort to save Chrysler, Iacocca turned to the federal government for help in what would become known as the Chrysler bailout.
The government wanted to save Chrysler for a couple reasons. And Jimmy Carter in 1979 is running for re-election. Carter could not afford to let one of the largest automobile manufacturers go out of business and then lose all those union jobs and still get the Democratic nomination. The other thing is, I think it was an idea of just a symbol. You know, in 1979, the country was doubting itself, whether we really were the best in the world. If Chrysler had gone out of business, I think that just would have thrown a negative stigma into the American public's psyche that maybe we weren't the best.
The government aid to Chrysler came in the form of loan guarantees.
The overall package was a loan guarantee from the government for, I think, $1.5 billion. And then there were a series of concessions given by suppliers, by union people, by state and local governments. The union had to give back, I think it was $2 an hour to Chrysler, plus take some freezes, plus allow some changes in work rules and allowed Chrysler the ability to close some plants. The UAW was willing to agree to these terms because I really had no other options.
The reduced wages agreed to by the United Auto Workers lowered Chrysler's production costs. This contributed to an increase in short-run aggregate supply. Aggregate demand was increased by two factors: the $1.2 billion in government-backed loans and the stabilizing effects of saving 150,000 jobs. Both shifts started moving the economy back toward full employment equilibrium.
Chrysler got back on its feet through a couple of different things. First of all, one, Iacocca had taken the workforce from 40,000 in 1979 to about 22,000 in 1983. Reagan's tax cut certainly helped stimulate demand during that period of time, and basically the pent-up of demand for automobiles.
If you buy any car without considering Chrysler,
And they'd done a very nice job of marketing their product. I think the spring of 1983 was their first profitable quarter since 1979. And I think they made like $140 million or $150 million. And then from then on, it was pretty much straight up for them. The union wages with Ford and General Motors and Chrysler came back into a parity in the late 80s.
The government's intervention helped Chrysler to recover and retain its place as one of the big three U.S. automobile companies. In 1999, Chrysler merged with the German auto manufacturer Daimler to become an even bigger player in the global marketplace. Given this successful outcome, was the Chrysler bailout the right thing to do?
I would argue that the federal government should not have done this. If we are going to allow families, in particular women, young women with young children, to be subject to the forces of the market, then it's hard for me to justify why a multi-billion-dollar corporation should, in effect, receive federal government assistance, and why that corporation shouldn't similarly be subject to the forces of the market. The bailout saved the stockholders of Chrysler. That's not an appropriate government policy to go around saving stockholders.
We either get $1 billion, or in about 12 months, you got $2.7 billion to take care of these people. In what? Not seed training. You won't train them fast enough. It's in welfare payments.
Chrysler came to the government as a private corporation, a profit-making corporation, and said that we need your unprecedented help. Don't let us fail, because the economy will go down with it.
In terms of economic rationale, you don't want to encourage bailouts, throughout the economy. What if several other companies took cue from that and thought that they could be careless or not quite as responsible in their affairs? But I'm not sure that there is evidence of any long-term serious problem that was caused in the economy. Basically, it is still not a very good idea for the government to create an environment where there are distortions in the marketplace or in the economy.
Competition's competition, and I like competition. And the more competition there is in the automobile business, the better it is for all the consumers.
Helped build some of America's most iconic structures, from the Superdome to the Bay Bridge, sold to Japan's Nippon Steel at auction for $14.9 billion. And with steel demand expected to increase, company stock jumped a whopping 26% in one day. The industry giant will remain in Pittsburgh under the same name, but many changes are expected. Here to react, Texas Public Policy Foundation Vice President Chuck DeVore. Chuck, morning to you.
Good morning, Steve.
Is this a sad day? U.S. Steel no longer owned by a U.S. company?
Well, it certainly is a sad day. At one point in time, U.S. Steel was the largest corporation in the world. But things change, and the use of steel as a share of the economy has declined. There are plenty of companies that are hundreds of times larger than U.S. Steel, and it's important to understand that Japan today is an ally. This isn't 1941. Nippon Steel has a lot of innovation and technology that they can bring to help improve the quality and competitiveness of the product coming out of U.S. Steel, it'll still be in America. It'll still be made by Americans. But, of course, it is a sad day. One last thing, Steve. If you want to prevent these things from happening, we need to change some of our tax code and allow for immediate expensing of major capital investments. And we also need to stop spending so much money on our massive federal deficits and on our huge trade deficit, because eventually these sort of things have to happen, balance out the dollars.
Yeah. Chuck, stop making sense, okay? Senator John Fetterman from the great state of Pennsylvania, where it will continue to be helmed and housed, said this: the acquisition of U.S. Steel by a foreign company is wrong for workers and wrong for Pennsylvania. I'm going to do everything I can to block it. Is he right?
I don't think so. If you look at history, it was a huge U.S. Steel strike throughout the entire sector in the late 1950s that first caused the Detroit automakers to turn to steel manufactured in both Japan and Germany. And that marked the long, slow downfall of the dominance of America's steel industry. So all I believe that Senator Fetterman is proposing is more of the same failed policies.
All right, let's switch gears and talk a little bit about what's going on in the Mideast. We understand that BP, British Petroleum, has stopped sailing tankers through the Red Sea because of attacks by the Iranian proxy forces, the Houthi rebels. Take a look right here. The shipping paused or limited from all of those companies. That's going to impact our prices, right?
Yeah, this is a form of warfare, and we saw this once before in the 1980s when you had the Iran-Iraq war. You had what was called the tanker war. And what was happening is Iran was seeking to drive up the insurance rates, because if you can't have insurance for these vastly expensive tankers, you're not going to sail where you don't have insurance. And so let there be no mistake, what we're seeing right now is the Houthi rebels are a proxy of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They're using weaponry supplied by the People's Republic of China. And our response has been underwhelming, which is why it keeps happening, Steve. One last important thing is, unless we go to the source and do like we did in 1988 with Operation Praying Mantis, which I was a part of the planning of the year before in the Reagan administration, unless we go to the source and exact pressure directly on Iran, this will continue. Now, I think it's important that your viewers understand that Iran has a communications command control and intelligence ship in the Red Sea right now that is coordinating these illegal attacks against international shipping. Why is that ship allowed to sail and put our own sailors and our allies' sailors in harm's way? Why are we continuing to soft pedal this? So I'll tell you why. The Biden administration doesn't want the cost of oil to shoot through the roof, because if you think his poll numbers are bad now, wait until the price of oil goes north of $100 a barrel.
Yeah, stay tuned for that. Chuck, I had no idea you were involved in Operation Praying Mantis.
Yes, I was. We did 2 war games in the basement of the Pentagon for about a week. And what was fascinating is the response that we ended up doing in our war game ended up with 50 casualties. The soft pedal response that you're seeing from the Biden administration right now ended up with 1,500 casualties during our simulation.
All right, something to think about, sobering ideas. Chuck, thank you very much for joining us today from Austin. And Merry